You might not believe this, but global Valentine's Day spending hit, get this, $25 billion in 2024.
Wow.
That's like bigger than some countries' entire economies. Can you believe that much money is spent on love? Or, well, expressions of it, I guess.
It's really a testament to the power of the love economy, and it's a force that's surprisingly resilient, even with the whole, economic situation. The report actually digs into how inflation and tech are shaking things up in this multi-billion-dollar industry, and believe me, there are some really eye-opening findings.
Welcome to the very first edition of WeWire's weekly recap of key global trends and insights on macroeconomics, geopolitical shifts, currency movements, finance, trade, and top investment highlights.
With John and Wendy.
All right, ready to dive in? We're going deep into the weekly Staywire report here at WeWire. It's like our cheat sheet for, actually understanding what's happening in the world.
That's right, we're cutting through the noise and giving you the insights you need to stay ahead of the curve.
Speaking of curves, let's talk about love, or at least the billions of dollars swirling around it. You might not believe this, but global Valentine's Day spending hit, get this, $25 billion in 2024.
Wow.
That's like bigger than some countries' entire economies. Can you believe that much money is spent on love? Or, well, expressions of it, I guess.
It's really a testament to the power of the love economy, and it's a force that's surprisingly resilient, even with the whole, economic situation. The report actually digs into how inflation and tech are shaking things up in this multi-billion-dollar industry, and believe me, there are some really eye-opening findings.
Okay, so maybe love is priceless, but those roses and fancy dinners, those definitely are not. The report pulls data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and get this, the price of roses jumped 18% last year. And don't even get me started on restaurant prices. They're up 12% on average. Are you feeling the pinch too?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. But it is fascinating to see how, consumers are adapting. The report calls it value seeking. And it's driving some pretty interesting trends: home-cooked meals, DIY gifts, experiences that create lasting memories. Basically, it's about getting creative and finding ways to express love that don't, completely drain your bank account.
Right.
Exactly. And this whole self-love trend is just exploding. Spending in this category is up 22% year on year. Now, I know what some people might be thinking. Is this, legit self-care or just clever marketing?
Probably a bit of both, but the report suggests this jump isn't just about, bath bombs and spa days. It might actually reflect a larger cultural shift towards self-prioritization, well-being. People are recognizing they need to invest in themselves, their mental health, their happiness, especially with how crazy the world feels these days.
It's almost like self-love is becoming a form of rebellion,
Yeah.
But we got to be real. Tech plays a huge role in all of this. And not just in those obvious ways. We're way past just ordering flowers online.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
The report says 47%, a whopping 47% of Valentine's Day purchases last year were made online. And those last-minute gift panics, forget about it. People are all over apps like Instacart, Uber Eats, and digital card platforms. Instant gratification at its finest.
But here's where things get really interesting. Social media has become the ultimate matchmaker for gifts. I mean, TikTok and Instagram are practically deciding what people are buying these days.
It's true. And brands are all over that with some seriously smart strategies. We're talking AI-powered recommendations that know your taste better than you do, augmented reality so you can try before you buy virtually, and even, get this, blockchain technology to prove those luxury purchases are real.
Wait, blockchain for Valentine's Day gifts?
Yeah, it's used to make sure stuff like diamonds and designer clothes are authentic. Imagine trying to explain that to your grandparents, right?
I know. Okay, let's zoom out a bit now. Look at the global market, because things are getting interesting there, too.
Yeah, it's like Africa is really becoming a major player, but the report makes it clear that not all economies are doing the same. Especially when it comes to their currencies. There's a huge range.
Yeah, and the report actually highlights those differences. It really shows you how diverse things are across the continent. Each country has its own unique challenges and opportunities.
Right.
Like, take Ghana. Their currency, the CEDI, has been dropping. That's usually a sign of economic instability, right? They're dealing with a lot of pressure on their foreign exchange, which makes it harder to, import goods and handle their debt.
So then you have the Kenyan shilling, which has been pretty stable. What are they doing right?
Well, the Central Bank of Kenya has been really active in managing the shilling's exchange rate. You can kind of think of it like a balancing act. They're trying to keep things steady, even with all the global ups and downs. That helps prevent those crazy swings that can totally mess up an economy.
Right, makes sense. So how about Nigeria? The report said their currency, the Naira, actually went up a bit this week. That's got to be good, right?
On the surface, yeah. It probably reflects some of the things the Central Bank of Nigeria has been doing. They're trying to deal with liquidity problems, dollar shortages, stuff like that. But, I mean, even with that recent little bump, the Nigeria is still down quite a bit since the beginning of the year.
So there's still some deeper problems, kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a bigger wound.
Exactly.
And then there's South Africa, a real powerhouse on the continent. Their currency, the rand, has bounced back a little this week, but
But the overall trend's been down. That reflects concerns about how things are going in South Africa economically. Those rolling power blackouts they're dealing with, the load shedding, those are really hurting the economy. Plus, investor confidence has taken a hit. And that, of course, weakens the rand even more.
wow, it's like a domino effect, right? Energy, investor trust, currency, it's all connective.
It is.
This report really shows how everything is tied together, like a giant web.
Yeah.
But there's one more currency the report mentions, the West African CFA francs.
Oh, yeah. The CFA francs is interesting because it's pegged to the euro, so its value is like directly linked to how the euro is doing. It gives it some stability, protects it from some of that volatility we see in other African currencies. It really is just another example of how diverse and complex the African economic landscape is.
Absolutely. This weekly Stay Wired report is like a front row seat to, how the world really works. I know lots of our listeners want to take all this knowledge and, actually use it, especially when it comes to investing. So let's wrap up by taking a peek at some of the week's most active stocks. Obviously, this isn't financial advice.
Of course not. Do your own research, talk to a financial advisor, but it is interesting to see what's catching people's attention.
Yeah, for sure. The report highlights companies from a bunch of different sectors, which I think reminds us how diverse the market is. You've got your big tech companies like Intel and NVIDIA. Those are both players in the, semiconductor space. Intel dipped this week, while NVIDIA basically stayed put.
It just shows you that even in the same sector, individual companies can go in totally different directions. It all depends on their products, their place in the market, and how investors feel about their future.
Right. Then there's SoundHound AI, another tech company, but focusing on voice AI. They had a pretty big drop this week.
Yeah, that's probably because of, some news or something that happened that made investors nervous, which led to people selling off to stock.
Makes sense. And of course, there's Tesla, this electric vehicle and clean energy company. They're always in the news.
Oh, yeah. Tesla stock is known for its volatility. Elon Musk's statements, technological advancements, how the whole electric vehicle market's doing, it all plays a role.
Definitely a wild ride. And then you've got Apple, the tech giant that always seems to do well. They're always up there, one of the most valuable companies.
Apple did see a little dip this week, but analysts still rate it a buy. They've got those loyal customers, a powerful brand, and they're good at innovating, which gives investors confidence in the long run.
So many different stories playing out. It really shows you how important it is to stay informed. Not just about the headlines, but, about what's really behind them.
That's right. It's about connecting the dots, seeing the patterns, and understanding how things that seem totally unrelated can actually affect each other. And that's what we're trying to do here at WeWire with our weekly Stay Wired report and this deep dive.
Exactly. It's like we're giving our listeners a superpower, the power of, knowledge. But as we wrap up part 2, what stands out to you as the most, surprising or insightful thing from this week's report?
I think for me, it's how resilient that love economy is. Even with inflation hitting people's wallets, they're still finding creative ways to express love, to focus on experiences. It's a good reminder that some things are more important than money.
That's a really nice thought. For me, I think it was just how diverse things are in the African market. So much potential, but also some real challenges. Definitely a region to keep an eye on. Okay, get ready, because in part 3, we're going to bring it all together. We'll explore what all these trends mean for our listeners and how they can use this knowledge to navigate a world that seems to get more complex every day. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to part 3 of our deep dive into WeWire's weekly Stay Wired report. It's wild how we've gone from like Valentine's Day and all that to, the global market and everything. Who knew they were so connected?
It really is like a tapestry, all those threads woven together. And the picture's always changing. But the cool thing is, if we understand those connections, then we can start to see opportunities and make better decisions, right?
Absolutely. So let's bring it all home for our listeners. Like, what does this actually mean for them? How can they use all these insights to, navigate their lives, their finances, even their relationships?
Well, first of all, it shows just how important it is to stay informed. I mean, with so much information out there, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But by tuning into sources you trust, like our weekly Stay Wired report, and of course listening to podcasts like this one, you can cut through all that noise and actually make sense of things.
Right. Knowledge is power. But what can people do with this power? It's not just about knowing stuff. It's about, using it in our lives.
Think about it like this. Remember how inflation's changing how people are spending for Valentine's Day? It's pushing people towards more creative, value-focused ways to show they care. Well, that same idea applies to other parts of our lives, too. When things change economically, we have to adapt, find new solutions, new opportunities.
So be adaptable, resourceful, and maybe like a little bit romantic even when it comes to money.
Right. And tech's a huge part of all this. Remember how we talked about e-commerce, social media, even blockchain? Those are changing how we shop, how we celebrate. And those same technologies are changing tons of other industries too. They're opening up new possibilities for work, education, entertainment, even how we connect with each other.
It's like a reminder to, embrace change, stay curious about all these new technologies. Don't be afraid to try stuff out, see how you can use them to your advantage. I mean, a few years ago, who would have thought blockchain would be used for like authenticating Valentine's Day gifts?
I know, right? It's crazy, and it shows how quickly things are changing. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the weekly Stay Wired report, I really want to encourage everyone to think about these trends in their own lives.
Yeah, great point. How do you think all these global economic trends might shape our listeners' future? Their spending, career choices, their relationships, all of that.
It's something we all need to think about for sure. Will we see even more tech in our lives? Will we prioritize experiences over, stuff? How will we handle all the changes in work and finance? These are questions everyone should be asking themselves.
And here at WeWire, we want to give you the tools and insights to answer those questions. Don't forget our weekly Stay Wired report. It's like your one-stop shop for, staying ahead of the curve, your personal guide to this crazy world.
We're here to help you break it all down, understand the trends, and make smart decisions.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the weekly Stay Wired report. Always a pleasure.
Great conversation.
And to all their listeners, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay wired to the world.